So, Merritt, in a previous role prior to coming to Engagys, you were a freelance greeting card writer for American Greetings. What best practices can you take from what you learned writing greeting card messages that you can now apply to healthcare communications? What can you share with us?
It's a great question, and I've got a few. So, how it worked for freelancing was I would get an assignment with a topic and an audience to write for. So, for instance, birthday cards for moms or for young kids or friends. And, that's so the message would resonate with the recipient. You wouldn't give your mom a card designed for a child unless she's really into dinosaurs or something, and you wouldn't give your 6 year old a card with really long prose in cursive. And so, the best practice here for healthcare communications is segmentation and relevance, right? So health plans already segment their communications, but sometimes they don't take it far enough. And I can give you a recent example from my personal health plan. So I got a letter encouraging my son to get a certain immunization, but he already got it a year ago. So the health plan most likely segmented by members with children in a certain age range, but they needed to take it a step farther and pull in claims data, that behavioral data. And then they could have excluded us from the campaign, right? So every time a health plan sends a message to their member that isn't relevant to them, they're essentially training their members to think their communications aren't important and can be ignored.
That is really important, Merritt. And you're right. Knowing the audience is critical, and pulling that claims data is so important. What's another best practice that you've learned?
Sure. Another best practice is framing and personalization. So, for greeting cards, the sentiment should be centered around the recipient. For instance, for a Mother's Day card, you would want to highlight your mom's great attributes and frame it in that way. So, you would talk about her and her great attributes. You're a great mom because of your kindness and your sense of humor, your work ethic, whatever it may be, so that it feels personalized to her own situation. For healthcare communications, the same is true. You will always want to frame your messages around the benefit and value to the member. We've seen messages from health plans that start with, our plans offer these benefits. And a quick flip when talking to members is, your plan includes these specific benefits that you can use to get to your doctor's visits, to save money on over the counter medicine, to save a trip to the pharmacy, that sort of thing. So that's always centered around the member and the value to them.
So interesting how just those couple of little words changing really does change the level of personalization in a communication.
Absolutely.
What's another one you can share with us?
Sure. So this one's trickier for health plans to do, but we'll set them apart if they can focus on it. And that's emotional connection. In greeting card writing, the cards that did well were the ones that felt authentic, they're not patronizing, they're warm or heartfelt, and they evoke an emotional connection. If you've ever received a card like this, it makes you feel closer to the person who gave it to you. So, how do you pull that into healthcare communications, right? It all starts with empathy. It's harder to come across in written communications, but including empathy language like, we understand, we're here to help you get the care you deserve, that's a good start. Another great place to focus is with your live agents. So, human connection is powerful and goes a really long way, especially in senior populations where loneliness is becoming an epidemic. Anytime your life agents are interacting with your members, think about ways the conversation can feel more human instead of like a transaction with a business. So this is where empathy training, active listening, and even simply icebreakers come in. So a simple, well, I get the answer to your question. What are you looking forward to this weekend? And then having them respond in a way that makes sense is a great way to build that connection and bond and that emotional connection.
Yeah, that's so true. And especially in healthcare today with trust being so important, building that emotional connection is so critical. So what's the last best practice that you can share with us, Merritt?
Sure. So this last one is short because it's all about brevity and capturing attention. People are busy, and the faster you can get to the point and capture attention, the better. I once had a greeting card get picked up that was only 5 words. So for healthcare communications, whatever you've written, cut it in half. And I'm only sort of joking, but make sure that you are only including the relevant information and do it in a succinct, easy to understand, health literate way. We once saw a communication that included a sentence that was 41 words long. So, you're going to lose attention with that one. You can also capture attention by making, it personalized, like we talked about earlier, relevant, including Johnson boxes in written communications, headlines, keeping the CTA, the call to action at the top, above the fold, and making use of white space so it's easy to scan. All those things will capture attention.
Amazing, Merritt. Thank you for sharing your engagement expertise with us.
Absolutely.